All right, today we're going to dive into a story that pretty much flips the script on everything we think we know about building a tech scene. We're talking about Bolivia, a country that's quietly creating this super dynamic AI hub, not with billions of dollars, but with some serious, pure ingenuity.
So, that leads us to the central question, right? How do you actually build a buzzing AI ecosystem when there's almost no money? Forget Silicon Valley and their massive funding rounds. This sounds like it should be impossible, but what's happening in Bolivia is just fascinating. So, let's just start with a number that sets the entire stage. Less than $15 million. That's the total amount of venture capital that's been invested across Bolivia's entire tech scene. To put that in perspective, a single startup in the US can burn through that in a few months. But here's the thing. This scarcity, it's not a bug. It's actually the defining feature of their whole strategy.
Which brings us to our first section, what we're calling Bolivia's AI paradox. You've got this fundamental tension between crazy growth on one hand and an extreme lack of funding on the other. So how can those two things possibly exist at the same time? Well, check this out. At first glance, you might see that a 57% drop in academic AI papers looks like a bad sign, like things are declining, but it's actually the complete opposite. It's a sign that the ecosystem is maturing. They've pivoted away from just theoretical research and are now focused on building practical AI companies that solve real problems. And those companies, they're growing at an incredible 40% every single year. So how are they pulling this off? A huge piece of the puzzle is this really smart geographic specialization. It all happens within something they call the Golden Innovation Triangle. 3 key cities, and each one plays a very specific, very important role.
You can almost think of it like a national assembly line for building startups. You've got Cochabamba, which is the technical engine. That's where the actual products get built. Then there's Cruz, the commercial hub, which is all about business, scaling, and money. And finally, La Paz acts as the policy center, dealing with regulations and government. Each city has a clear job to do, and they're all working in sync.
Let's just zoom in on Cochabamba for a second. This city is the absolute heart of Bolivia's tech talent. Get this, it produces a staggering 80% of the entire country's software exports. It's basically a talent factory, with coding boot camps pumping out skilled engineers who build the AI products that the rest of the country then takes to market.
And this is really the most crucial part. All this talent, they aren't just coding for fun. They are laser-focused on solving tangible, high-stakes problems that really matter to the Bolivian economy. Let's look at a few real-world examples. Okay, first up, logistics. Being a landlocked country, Bolivia's entire economy lives and dies by its trucking network. But for years, this huge, multi-billion-dollar industry was being managed with, I'm not kidding, phone calls and WhatsApp messages. As you can imagine, it was super inefficient, slow, and crazy expensive.
So, enter DeltaX.la. They built a machine learning platform that's basically like a digital air traffic control for all the freight trucks. It optimizes cargo loads and automatically matches trucks with businesses that need to ship things. They've already landed huge clients like Coca-Cola and AB InBev, and they've even raised $1 million to scale up. All right, next problem, the legal sector. Here, the big enemy was just bureaucracy. Lawyers were literally drowning in repetitive paperwork. It got so bad that some firms saw their revenues drop by almost half. They were spending more time as administrators than as actual legal experts. And a solution that emerged, iConnecta, is so cool because it was actually born inside a law firm to solve its own problem. It's an AI platform that just automates all that boring routine stuff, inquiries, documents, compliance checks, which frees up the lawyers to do the high-value strategic work that clients are actually paying for. It's just a perfect example of this problem-first approach. And finally, let's talk about a massive social and economic challenge, financial inclusion. In Bolivia, tons of entrepreneurs, especially out in rural areas, just can't get loans. Why? Because they don't have the formal credit histories that traditional banks demand. They're effectively locked out of the financial system. This is where a company called Cobin SA comes in. Their AI is smart enough to look beyond just a traditional credit score. It analyzes alternative data, like a person's digital transaction patterns, to figure out if they're a good risk. This lets them give low-interest loans to the very people the banks have been ignoring for years, unlocking all this new economic opportunity. Okay, so you've got specialized talent, and they're solving real problems. But again, how are they doing it with so little money? This gets us to the absolute secret sauce of the whole operation, the core philosophy of what we can call the lean innovation machine.
This is really the key insight. You can think of it as the Bolivian efficiency ratio. Put simply, it's a measure of how much revenue a startup can generate for every single dollar of capital it raises. And in Bolivia, this ratio is just off the charts. The scarcity of cash forces founders to be brutally efficient and to focus on making a profit from day one. It's a bootstrap-first mentality, born out of pure necessity.
And this one quote really just sums up the whole mindset perfectly. The scarcity of capital isn't a weakness, it's a filter. It forces a kind of discipline that creates stronger, more resilient companies that know how to make every single dollar count.
Now, of course, this model isn't perfect. It's not without its challenges. And to keep this incredible momentum going, Bolivia has to navigate some pretty serious hurdles that are coming up fast. The biggest hurdle by far is what's known as the Series A funding gap. You see, while local VCs are great at providing that initial seed money to get a company off the ground, there's almost no one in the country to write those bigger, follow-on checks, the $1 to $5 million checks a company needs to really scale up. This forces their most successful startups to have to look outside the country for that next round of funding. And making that funding problem even trickier is this legislative vacuum. Bolivia is one of the only countries in the region that still doesn't have a modern comprehensive data privacy law. For those international investors they need to attract, this kind of legal gray area is a huge red flag. It makes them really hesitant to invest. So the path forward is actually pretty clear. For investors, the goal is to step up and bridge that Series A gap locally. For policymakers, they've got to prioritize and pass a data protection law to create some certainty. And for the entrepreneurs themselves, the advice is to just keep doubling down on these vertical AI markets like logistics and legal tech, where they have a unique advantage and can really own the region. And all of this leaves us with a final, really powerful thought. You know, what's happening in Bolivia isn't just some local success story. It could actually be a blueprint. In a world that's obsessed with billion-dollar companies and massive funding rounds, could this lean, capital-efficient, problem-focused model be the real future of innovation for other emerging markets? It's a pretty powerful idea to think about. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.